20 million records. Stadiums sold out. A sound so deeply American that radio couldn't resist it and fans couldn't forget it. They were the Marshall Tucker Band, and for one blazing decade, they were untouchable. Then a car crash, a death, an addiction that hollowed out their greatest songwriter, and a band left wondering whether any of it was worth continuing. This is not a straight-line rise-to-fame story. This is about 6 men who built something extraordinary and then watched it get taken apart, piece by piece, by the very forces that made them great. But to understand the collapse, we have to go back to the beginning. Spartanburg, South Carolina. 1972. Spartanburg wasn't a music town. It was working class, southern, and proud, the kind of place where people worked hard and kept their heads down. Rock and roll was not the plan. But in 1972, 6 young men formed something that nobody saw coming. Doug Gray, the voice, all fire and feeling. Toy Caldwell, guitarist and songwriter, a quiet genius who could say in 4 bars what most people couldn't say in 4 verses. His brother Tommy Caldwell locked down the bass. George McCorkle on rhythm guitar. Paul Riddle on drums. And Jerry Eubanks, the wild card, playing flute and saxophone. In a southern rock band. And somehow it worked. They called themselves the Marshall Tucker Band. Here's the thing, Marshall Tucker was not in the band. He was a piano tuner. His name was on a key to the rehearsal space they'd been borrowing. They liked the sound of it. And decades later, that borrowed name would become the center of a legacy war nobody could have predicted. Their sound was unlike anything else on the southern rock scene. Where Lynyrd Skynyrd hit hard and mean, and the Allman Brothers stretched into jazz territory, the Marshall Tucker Band went somewhere more melodic, country warmth, blues feeling, jazz instincts, all wrapped in Toy Caldwell's cinematic songwriting. He didn't write rock songs. He wrote road stories. Capricorn Records, home of the Allman Brothers, signed them. Their debut dropped in 1973. Buried in that first album was a slow, aching anthem called Can't You See? It wasn't an immediate hit. It just burrowed into people and stayed. But even then, before the arenas, before the gold records, something was already ticking. Toy Caldwell was the creative engine of this machine. And Toy Caldwell was already carrying demons nobody was talking about. Ominous sting. Music fades. By 1974 they were accelerating. A new life pushed them deeper into the American consciousness. Blue Ridge Mountain Sky was confident, poetic, unmistakably southern. But beneath the momentum, the road was already grinding them down. Hundreds of shows a year. No breaks. A touring machine that ran on fumes and adrenaline. Then 1975. Sing for a Rainbow. And the song that would define them on rock radio for the next 50 years. Fire on the Mountain. The kind of track that gets played on a Friday afternoon and makes you roll the windows down and drive somewhere you haven't planned. It was massive. They toured with Lynyrd Skynyrd. They shared stages with Charlie Daniels. They were the Southern rock movement, not just part of it, not just adjacent to it. They were one of its defining acts. What fans didn't see, Toy Caldwell was carrying the whole creative operation alone. Writing the songs, driving the sound, absorbing the pressure, while the machine kept demanding more. 1977, Carolina Dreams. The lead single, Heard It in a Love Song, became their biggest chart moment, top 20 on the Billboard Hot 100. Arenas. Gold records. An international fan base. Over 20 million records sold worldwide. They were, by any measure, one of the greatest Southern rock acts that ever lived. The real cost, though, was being paid quietly. On tour buses at 3 a.m. Backstage. In places no camera ever caught. Late 1970s. Marshall Tucker Band at absolute peak. Arenas packed. Can't You See? On jukeboxes from Georgia to California. This was the dream, and they were living it. But that peak was also the trapdoor. Capricorn Records, the label that built them, was collapsing. Punk had hit Britain like a bomb. Disco was swallowing American radio. Southern rock was being repositioned from national movement to regional curiosity. The culture had shifted under their feet without asking permission. Capricorn went bankrupt in 1979. The band signed to Warner Brothers. But the momentum was broken, not just in the industry, but inside the band itself. Toy Caldwell's substance struggles were worsening. His songwriting was slowing. The spark was flickering. And none of them knew the worst was still ahead. April 28, 1980. Tommy Caldwell, bassist, founding member, Toy's brother, died in a car accident. He was 28 years old. Stop and think about what that means. This wasn't a personnel change. This was a family losing a son. Two brothers who had started a band together in Spartanburg, one of them was gone. And the band that had sold 20 million records suddenly had no idea what it was supposed to do next. They nearly stopped. Right there. Doug Gray decided to keep going. A decision that would define the rest of the band's history. But the band that came back from that grief was not the same band. New members filled Tommy's seat. Toy, already struggling, now dealing with losing his brother, retreated. His songwriting dried up. The internal tensions that had always existed now broke into the open. The creative core was gone. Radio had moved on to new wave. Synth pop. Hair metal. The Marshall Tucker Band, once filling arenas, were now fighting for room on schedules that didn't want Southern rock anymore. Sales dropped. The lineup splintered. The identity that had been so carefully built now felt like it belonged to a different era. It did. Through the 1980s, the band rotated members, released records that barely charted, and kept touring, because touring was the only thing left. Toy Caldwell, the architect of everything, eventually left. He stepped away from the band he had essentially built, carrying the weight of loss and addiction and years of being the engine that never got to rest. Doug Gray never stopped. Through every departure, every crisis, every moment when quitting would have been rational, Gray held onto the name and kept going. Whatever you think about legacy bands, that kind of stubbornness takes something. By the early 1990s, Southern rock was quietly coming back. Classic rock radio was rediscovering the catalog. CD reissues were landing in the hands of a new generation. Can't You See, never a massive hit when it was released, was becoming something bigger than a hit. It was becoming a standard. For a moment, it felt like maybe there was a second chapter here. Like the Marshall Tucker Band could step back into the light. Then February 3, 1993. Toy Caldwell, the man who wrote Can't You See, who gave the Marshall Tucker Band its soul, died of cardiac arrest. He was 45. The original creative era was over. Not fading. Now Doug Gray was the last founding member standing. And here's where the story turns into something rock history keeps repeating and never learns from. What is a band when its creator is gone? What does the name mean when the person who built it is in the ground? The Marshall Tucker Band, a name borrowed from a piano tuner who never played a note with them, became a legacy touring act. New musicians. Same name. Doug Gray as the living thread connecting it to something real. Can't you see? Kept growing. Films, TV, commercials, streaming playlists. A song written by a dead man, still earning, still reaching new years, still meaning something to people who weren't born when it was recorded. The fans who were there in 1973, and the fans who found the song on Spotify last week, they both love it. But the band playing it today? Almost none of the same people. Some former members and their families kept their distance from the ongoing touring operation. The fracture between those who stayed and those who were gone became its own kind of silence. Loud, unresolved, permanent. Decades after their peak, the battle wasn't about music anymore. It was about who owns the memory. The Marshall Tucker Band still tours. Doug Gray still takes the stage. His voice carries 50 years of road, loss, and stubbornness, and he still plays "Can't You" like he means it. Their catalog is on every streaming platform. Someone in Seoul is discovering Fire on the Mountain right now. Someone in London is hearing "Heard It in a Love Song" for the first time tonight. The music got out. It escaped everything that happened to the people who made it. But Toy Caldwell is gone. Tommy Caldwell is gone. The 6 young men who walked into that rehearsal space in Spartanburg in 1972 with a key that had a stranger's name on it, most of them never got to see how far it traveled. And that's the thing Toy Caldwell understood before anyone else did. Southern rock was always music about loss. About roads that go somewhere and don't come back. About the things you chase and the things that chase you. He was writing his own eulogy long before he had any reason to. 20 million records. Filled arenas. An uncompromising sound on their own terms. And when the industry moved on, when tragedy hit again and again, the music didn't flinch. Can't You See is not a 1973 song anymore. It belongs to every empty highway and every open window and every moment when you need to feel something real. The Marshall Tucker Band story is not a perfect story, but it's an honest one. And in Southern rock, that was always enough. Slow fade. Can't You See guitar motif carries out under closing visuals. Did you see them live? Do you remember the first time Can't You See hit you? Drop it in the comments. I want to hear every story. If this one got you, hit like and subscribe. More deep dives on the bands who built American rock and paid the price for it, coming soon.